has indicated a willingness to negotiate, but only if Iran accepts U.S. terms in advance. Was put most clearly by Vice President Joe Biden. He said, yeah, we're happy to negotiate as soon as you abandon your illicit weapons programs. Well, what are the illicit weapons programs? According to U.S. intelligence, Iran hasn't had any weapons programs for years. And Obama recognizes this. His administration said, we reject the national intelligence estimate, even though we have no new evidence. We reject it because we don't like it. Okay, so that takes care of that. Therefore, they have to abandon their illicit weapons programs, which they may very well have. It would surprise me much, but there's no evidence for it. The policy for Iran has been placed in the hands of Dennis Ross. He's an extreme hawk who comes straight out of the offshoots of the Israeli lobby, and that's not, tells you something about what's intended. Obama did give a highly praised conciliatory New Year's message that he sent, Iranian New Year, that he sent to Iran. A lot of talk about that. And the rhetoric was kind of conciliatory until you read it closely. And what he said is, you can take your rightful place in the community of nations if you abandon terror and arms, and if you turn to peaceful actions. Okay. Now those remarks passed without comment, but think about them for a minute. Who is speaking those words? The person who's at the head of the superpower that's occupying two countries on the borders of Iran, that spends about half of the world's total military spending, and that has a record of violence and aggression that nobody even comes close to. And we're telling them that they have to abandon terror and arms to be accepted into the civilized world. Iran does produce arms. Its military expenditures are approximately comparable to Kuwait's, and far less than Israel in per capita terms, way below. It hasn't invaded anyone for hundreds of years, but it's their responsibility to abandon arms and violence because we tell them to, given our stellar record in this respect. Well, important fact about this is that nobody laughs. And that tells us something about our country. No one laughs, and it reveals the depths of the principle that we own the world. So whatever we do is right and just. And anyone who objects is a criminal. No questions asked, except will it work? Well, we do read constantly that the international community insists that Iran stop uranium enrichment, which everyone agrees it's entitled to do as a signer of the Non-Proliferation Treaty. They have to stop, and the international community says so. Well, who's the international community? It's an interesting question. It excludes most of the countries of the world. It excludes the non-aligned countries, who forcefully reiterate that Iran has the same right as every other signer of the NPT to enrich uranium. So most of the countries of the world aren't in the international community. Another interesting group that's not in the international community is the overwhelming majority of Americans. By a large majority, Americans agree that with the non-aligned countries, that Iran has the right to develop nuclear energy, but not nuclear weapons. So Americans aren't part of the international community. In fact, who's in I should say, incidentally, that the uranium enrichment program in Iran was strongly supported by the United States during the rule of Shah, the tyrant that the U.S. and Britain imposed when they overthrew Iranian democracy. But also I should say that in all of this, so the international community, what it comes down to is Washington and whoever happens to agree with it, but not most of the world and not the large majority of Americans. You're not part of the international community. Also unmentioned is the most significant proposal of the large majority of Americans, and in fact the world, namely that a nuclear weapons-free zone should be established in the whole region. That would include Iran, Israel, and any U.S. forces deployed there. last polls I saw, maybe 75% of Americans favor that, as do the non-aligned countries and Iranians and others. But that's kind of unmentionable. All of this indicates that we have to qualify the principle that I mentioned, that Washington, that we own the world. That we own the world in a very specific sense, where we excludes the American population. It refers to the U.S. government. So yes, in that sense, we own the world. That's unchallengeable doctrine. That's again a problem for American democracy, the ones I mentioned before. Well, Obama's primary foreign policy declaration, and the one I'll continue and finish with, has to do with the Israel-Palestine problem. That's the only one on which he's been pretty explicit. So his first declaration, just as background, there's a very clear criterion to evaluate U.S. policies that Obama will propose, implement, and that others have proposed. In this case, there really is an international community in the genuine sense. For 30 years, there's been an overwhelming international consensus on a solution to the diplomatic solution to the Israel-Palestine conflict, namely a two-state settlement on the international border, internationally recognized border, with, and here I'll quote U.S. formulation, with minor and mutual modifications. It's a ceasefire line, so you can straighten it out. So that's the international consensus. It's accepted by everyone, accepted by a large majority of Americans, by the non-aligned countries, Europe, Latin America. Hamas has accepted it. Hezbollah and Iran have accepted it. In fact, the only objection to it comes from Washington and Israel. Washington has unilaterally blocked it for over 30 years. So there is a criterion to evaluate whatever Obama is going to propose. Will we join the world or won't we? Okay. And his first declaration was very revealing in this respect. He stated that Israel's security is our primary concern, but he pointed out that there is a constructive proposal on the table, which came from the Arab world. It's the Arab League proposal. And he said, Obama said that this proposal called on the Arab states to normalize relations with Israel, and he urged the Arab states to proceed with this proposal of theirs. Well, Obama's a literate person. He chooses his words carefully. He's perfectly well aware that that's not the Arab League proposal. It's a footnote to it. The Arab League proposal it just reiterates the international consensus. It says there should be a two-state settlement on the international border, maybe minor modifications. And in that context, it says the Arab states should go ahead to normalize relations with Israel. Well, Obama very crucially and carefully excluded the content and kept the corollary to the footnote. And that tells us something. It tells us that he intends to continue with U.S. rejections. That is the U.S. refusal to accept the international consensus. Unfortunately, whatever qualification you want to give, the media and commentators are very obedient, so you'll have to look hard to find this observation, though it's elementary, and as soon as you look at the declaration, you'll see it at once. This declaration was given when he was announcing the appointment of George Mitchell as his emissary for Israel and the Arabs. And that's a good appointment. Mitchell's a serious person. If he's given any leeway to do anything, well, he was appointed with the